one of the things that, as a profession that I've also wondered, I think Sapna spoke briefly about it, is this whole issue about, liability. The projects are becoming very, very complex today. The project sizes have increased tremendously from, when the profession started 50 years, at least, and the council was 50 years ago. So what is really holding back, the idea of an architectural practice being an LLP? I mean, I know it was on the board also just now that it's still a form that is not acceptable. And can we not use, there are lots of other professions also have this, there are lots of lawyers, I'm sure, who would be willing to sort of help in this cause. What's really holding back an architectural practice from being classified as an LLP?
Nothing is holding us back. It's only the amendment in the Architects Act which needs to be done. And that process is on. And I think hopefully after that is done, we should be able to have a LLP. We have little reservations about private limited company, I think, which Deepak ji would be able to probably answer why there are hesitations on that. But LLP, there is no issue about it at all.
Yeah. LLP is allowed for company secretaries, for chartered accountants also. In company, there is a fear of monopolization of practice also. So companies are not allowed, but LLP definitely we have recommended in our proposal for amendment to that, and that should be there. Because presently liability is unlimited. In partnership firms and proprietorship, your liability is unlimited. And we have moved a proposal that would be considered by the government. And I think our architects should also write to the government and to the parliamentarians that this should be done at the earliest so that our liabilities are restricted. Thank you.
The issue lies here that, council is writing, council is in touch with the ministry. But like Deepak just said, all of you should write to the ministry. If there are about 1.5 lakh of letters going in to the ministry to make a LLP, they will act faster. So like I always say, together only we can bring about a change. So do not depend on the council or any other organization to do this job. Let us do it individually from our own end as well.
We had a very big fight with the local municipal administration for our inclusion into the Nirman 2 software for sanctioning of the plans. The government of Karnataka has come up with this. And the municipality wanted to have all our registration by paying some 1,500 rupees into the corporation, and which we refused to do because we have COA registration, which we are allowed to practice anywhere, but they never listened. So we had a big fight. Later, we had to approach the High Court, and we got a stay order, and which still it has not been implemented. But now they say we will do it in the Nirman 2, which is a software which is run to sanction for the plans where our names will be included. So how does the COA will help in the local administration, all the architects practice in towns and cities and like this, if the governments take their own courses? I need a little...
So we have been writing to various authorities across the country, development authorities, corporations, improvement trust, and many other authorities. We've been writing continuously wherever it has been brought to our notice. Oberoi will be able to probably brief better on this, but we've been writing to many authorities across the country.
Sir, actually we are writing to all these authorities wherever communications is coming to us like that. So people are accepting also, authorities are accepting to council's requests also. So you let us know, sir. We can again write to them and we can meet the secretaries and wherever we require. We are ready to do that as well.
In raising all our voices on this kind of a platform and strengthening our unity in application of this manual of practices. So even such small issues will become very, very effective when we all join together as in effectiveness in bringing the strength for our fraternity. This is where it will help all of us. Thank you.
Sir, I would advise that we file contempt petitions also. Like if after High Court order they are not doing it, better you file contempt petition because that will put pressure on the officers. They cannot delay further. They are not implementing your order.
Yeah, but what happens, running practices and running behind these court and other matters, practices get affected a lot. Other people take advantage of us because these people are only doing this.
I would recommend, sir, prior to that, we should talk to the concerned authorities. It should be brought to their notice. This is wrongly you are doing this should be stopped.
Yeah, we have already been doing, and every municipal commissioner who comes in, gets transferred by two and a half years. Yeah.
Council into this exercise also, sir. We are ready to do this.
Yeah.
My first and foremost question is it prescriptive or it is just suggestive? Because you know, the moment you say that you laid out the way the 3 contracts can be held, does it hold scrutiny of the court? Because you can do whatever you want, you can produce a manual which is within this room or within the architects in the courts or in front of law and say, my council says, and this is prescriptive of me, and this should hold good against any law or anything, because I'm facing those kind of issues and I feel there's nobody to protect me on that. So as I said, I really appreciate what you've done, but I would like to know, is it just a manual as a guideline or it stands scrutiny of any other authority?
So we carefully examined what are the practices in neighboring countries. So let me tell you, when you talk about scale of fees all over the world, unfortunately, nobody could make those scale of fees mandatory. These are all recommendatory. Because there is a recent case which me and Salil was talking. In London, somebody tried to enforce the scale of fees as a mandatory, and they lost the case in the High Court because it's a freedom for architect as well as client to decide the scale of fees. So this is recommendatory, it's a guideline. Now the whole idea here, like President said, all of us, we said, if we all start following that, it will become strong. If you'll go even for the doctor's profession, if you'll go for even chartered accountant's profession, the fees cannot become mandatory, number one. Now other methodologies which are given here, like a draft contract is given there. Okay, now that draft contract is also a document which is coming from COA desk. If you will tell your client, like Salil very correctly said, please tell me what is wrong in this. This is a very fair contract, and I'll tell you, all good clients, they will agree for it. So again, that cannot be made mandatory. So in a nutshell, entire this manual is recommendatory, it's not mandatory, but it gives you that opportunity, a very clean, clear, immaculate opportunity to have a very healthy and a ethical relations with your client. And if everybody starts following, so when you go to the hospital, they say you first sign this, then we will see you. All hospitals, small hospital, big hospital, they say first you sign this document that you are knowing this risk, etc., and then you do it. So like that, if it will happen, then it will support us.
This is a very good example that Sandeep has given. When you get admitted in hospital, going for an operation, you have to sign a declaration, consent form, whatever. That's also not mandatory. Answering in short to what Vivek has asked, not everything in the manual can become a regulation. We are trying, like there is a minimum standards of professional practice, 1989. We are going to amend that, and some part of this will be in that regulation as well. But like fees and so many other things will not be a part of regulation.
So my question is, what part of this manual can become a regulation? Because, you know, we are all interested in that. Everything else is subjective. You know, I want to follow that. I hire an architect who's just being paid 20,000 rupees or 70,000 rupees, whatever. So the fees manual will change because your man-hour calculation will change depending on what kind of people you have. So I'm very happy that you've done city-wise and all of that indexes have been taken into account. But you know, what we are looking at and looking for from the council, and the real support will come when there is a regulatory document which I can present to my client, to whatever competitions are held. You know, today we all know that even the competitions where the government bodies themselves do not honor the fee prescribed by council. So where we don't have any teeth at all. What we're looking as a fraternity is for council to provide us claws, teeth, to be able to chew into a document or chew into a contract or chew into any of the things that we do with might, which I find completely lacking even now, notwithstanding the fact that it's a completely exhaustive document that you guys have prepared. What we need to do is move a step forward and get a regulatory mechanism into the whole thing, so that there would be something which is prescriptive and something which is suggestive.
Yes, we are. The next step is to do that and try to convert it into a legal document to be presented to the ministry to convert it into regulations. So what can be done, what cannot be done is not a very easy process, nor I want to commit at the moment, because there are a lot of legalities involved and a lot of administrative issues involved at that. But most of it we're trying to convert it into regulations. But what we're trying to do and tell you guys is that regulations come from within, not from outside. Fraternity as a whole have to understand that the regulations and the guidelines, everything has to come from within. We have to walk the path of truth. And when we walk the path of truth, nothing can make you waver from that path of truth. There may be difficulties, there may be obstacles, but we have to overcome that. And this is the first step on walking the path of truth, is what I'm trying to tell.
But that's the issue, the regulation coming from within, the within is 130,000 individuals. So how can you bring them to a common platform? And that is what is the issue. The whole issue is about parity of fee or whatever. There can never be parity of fees, which I'm glad that we should acknowledge. It's based on my caliber, and it's based on the ability of the client to pay. So both the things are, so if we don't mix up the two things together, I think it'll be a more concise manual which will help us all. And that, of course, is what is required. And also, I think, as you said, it's going to be a dynamic document. If it's going to be steered by new set of people, then also it wouldn't help, because new set of people have their own idea. They will come out, change the basic intent of this document. So either we should have a continuity of the panel which is there now, these 3 guys, 5 of you or whatever, that should continue, so that there is a continuity of the intent. Because I have seen that the intent can completely change with the new set of people who will come, may not agree with whatever has been written here. So we will always have a fluid document. What we need to do after 75 or whatever years of council is to have a document which is not, which cannot be looked in hindsight. It has to be always carried forward.
Two things, Vivek, I want to just mention. One is that you realize that the National Building Code that we all follow is not regulated. There's no regulation. No, it is not regulation. No, on fire, okay. The whole book, which is whatever, it is multi-volume book, is not a regulation, but we all all follow it. So it's not necessary that because, and I think what Habeeb is trying to say is that there are obviously certain subjects and certain topics that you'll never be able to regulate. But there are certain subjects and certain topics that can eventually become regulation. So that will sift through in the manual, and I think in time to come, it will definitely happen. We're hoping that this becomes like, the way an Encyclopedia Britannica is, there is a core thing. If you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, every year they add words to it. So it is something that we are, hoping that it becomes some sort of a cycle there, that, the authorship, is not indefinite. Someone has parked this and it keeps getting sort of bettered. Hopefully it'll be like the Ramayana, that the Ram and Sita will still always remain the same, that at least that will not change. The rest of it can keep getting added, that's all right.
The idea is a message coming on WhatsApp these days is treated as final and acceptable, but something that has come out of this is questioned. I'm not talking of this particular manual, but that is the state of paradox that we are living in these days today. We need to understand that whatever we are doing at the council regarding this manual is in good faith, and we need to, each of us, imbibe within our own selves the values of ethical practices, is what we're trying to say, so that all of us are on an equitable and a paritable platform.
I realize that even the government does not take any of this seriously. So even when we are signing agreements for a government project, first we give a designs, then we go on to giving a deposit, then we go on to giving a performance security. So where does this end? And you don't get your fees at that point of time. So we are talking about young practices which can never afford to do any of this. You might get a job because it's a competition. But post that, even to sign a contract and to start the work, it is a challenge. So if there is some manner by which council can step in and take this.
See, basically now one thing all of us must understand. There is an exhibit. It's not guideline. There is a live exhibit in this manual which gives you a completely very well weighted draft contract. So there are exhibits in this volume 3 which depicts all kinds of practices that we normally do, being as a comprehensive consultant or as an architect. Now suppose tomorrow there is a RFP comes from government or a private person and that RFP is not matching with the draft contract which you have. So you go in a pre-bid meeting and say, hey, this is what I have from my COA and this is fair. Why don't you take it? Now the proponent, allow me to complete. The proponent has two options. Either to accept and change those clauses, or they will say, no, my way or highway, don't do it. Don't participate. Walk out of that competition. Don't take those jobs. Simply, and don't allow your peers to take that job and complain to the council, say that this is a draft and here is the competition. I put the pre-bid meeting request. My peers are not listening and participating. We all can put a moral pressure on our friends. That's the only way it can happen. It happens internationally only this way. There's no way you can be protected whereby you can be dictatorial and say, this is the draft, you take it or leave it. No. See, we have been receiving a draft from our clients and it is always one-sided for whatever purpose. So we always reciprocate with them and we say, hey, how about this? Because this is fair. And I have got a live practice where 10 out of 10 clients, they listen. Clients are not bad. We ourselves don't advocate our case and then it goes ahead.
Sandeep, I agree with you 100%. There are a lot of times that we do step out of a competition because the norms are not followed. But what I'm trying to say is there are some things which the government has to start. And
yes, agreed.
I
Agreed. What
think
you're saying
this is something is...
See, this is the first step, baby steps that we're taking. And I'm looking forward to the day when 1.5 lakh architects would say, this is my Bible. When all of us start saying that, this is it, I'm not going to walk outside this. That would be the day when things will change. I mean, these issues of procurement of services, RFPs, performance, security deposits, and XYZ is a long process. It's not going to change overnight by this manual. This manual is not going to change that. This time is going to change that when all of us say that this is the parameter that I'm walking on, I'm not going to go outside this. Then the time will come when this will happen. Our generation is gone. We have few more active years of practice left, maybe 10, 20, 30. But this is for the betterment of the future generations to come. We are working on that. It's a long process which needs to be, done. It's not an easy job.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. But our generation has to put our foot down, at least when you're a jury, and say, please follow what needs to be meaningful. That's a request.
In fact, Madam, I mean, I've been saying this, and Sapna is sitting right next to me, that every government architect is an architect, and they are all members of all registered with the council. And if they are saying that this is my Bible, they should be telling their own departments that this has to be followed. And I think that onus has to also be put on them. And as it happens, the council has a majority of government architects, in that panel. Out of 53 members, typically most states appoint, their own state architects. You're supposed to appoint an architect from the state, but most of them are, government architects. My point is, and I've been, sort of saying this earlier, even, as a, person who's authored that or partly authored that, to say we should put our pressure on these government architects to say, how are you accepting your department is floating a competition and you being an architect are not going to follow the Council of Architecture, then should I just pull your degree away? Because, you lose your job because now suddenly you're not an architect anymore. So we've got to figure out, advocacy is perhaps part of what we ought to be doing. We can't just be sitting in our offices and then just complaining. It's really not right. And who's going to do it? Somebody has to do the work, like we were saying, So my point is advocacy. So if we're going to have to talk to other architects, IIA, our IID, all these sort of, social organizations that we've got, maybe when we meet even in a Rotary Club meeting, we've got to do this. There's no other way of belling the cat. It's just us who has to take this step. It might sort of, but we've got to, and like I said, let us put pressure on the government architects first to say, will your state, like when Sapna was talking about the fact, and we sort of had this discussion with her saying, if someone is quoting 0.5% fees, I said, you as an architect should be shooting this guy. You're going to give me this thing. This is what my manual is saying. Should, one of you needs to sort of take action. And we should start putting pressure on these people. All the architects who are in CPWD, Saying you're up, which side are you on? Are you like an architect or are you, you're just looking at your paycheck every month? So I think we should all.
So if you're saying the things are not changing, it's not right. Because earlier government used to only, in competition just go for L1. But recently we have, I can say for my state, in a few projects, we have brought this 80-20 where we are talking about quality and the cost. But again, I would like to again say, when I just shared there, the owner still lies with us. The highest still doesn't get the project because still architects quote even 0.5%. I wonder 400 crore ka project, if it goes for 0.5, what kind of service we are providing? I really wonder. And in one of the juries, I was there, and there was a lot of architects sitting there, and they just said, "Ki ma'am, why don't you tell this health corporation to fix 3%?" I said, "Okay, fine. For you all, I said, do not quote below. Just everyone should just quote 3% and let the best, project wins." But when we opened the envelope, it went till 0.25 also. So, what will the government do? So I think this is what here I want to say. And another fact, every time in so many platforms, they is saying, council to kuch nahi kar raha, council to kuch nahi kar raha. This is the kind of thing we are affirming and we are putting in the universe. See, it goes in the ears of the government. They knows council kuch nahi kar raha. So, what are we telling? Because in one of the jury, when I spoke, next time when there was meeting, I was not part of the jury. Only secretaries were part of the jury, and I'm glad in the manual we are bringing this out that minimum 3 architects have to be part of the jury. So please, we all have to stay united. And when we say COA kuch nahi kar raha, government kuch nahi kar raha, it's not true. We have to stay united and put our hands together and then move forward. Then we can bring the change. Thank you.
Thank you. We have taken the first step. Just walk the path. Believe that this manual is for the good of you, and for the good of the profession. First, believe in that, and then walk the path. We as the committee has graciously agreed to conduct a competition for the training and research center that is going to come up in Bangalore on a 2-acre land. And we will float the competition, ideal competition, conducted ideally. And I request all of you to participate, and I'll be very happy that a young architect with no experience wins the competition, and we will show to the fraternity that this is how a young architect can be engaged. So walk the path. I want each one of you to walk that path.
Another thought that, about regulatory bodies. We have a very new regulatory body, which is actually making a lot of difference to how buildings are made. The IGBC and GREHA, they have the teeth to provide you ratings, basis which you can purchase FSIs, which have huge impact, monetary impact and other environmental impact, obviously. So why can't council suddenly have that kind of a regulatory mechanism in place? IGBC and GREHA are very recent, not even 15, 20-year-old. Now today, the government is allowing them to, in fact, make an impact on FARs of the tune of 0.5% or something like that, which is substantial. When you're talking about from 2 to 2.5, it makes millions of square feet sometimes. So why can't, so if a new body through government regulation can come into picture, forget about Council of Architecture as just overall mechanism. Another body within the council which has the regulatory mechanism which the government accepts. I think this is where we need to work towards. And we have an example. So I do not know what legislation, whatever you need to do. We must form a committee which should consist of people who can have influence in the government or whatever, the secretariat or whatever. Like the Environment Ministry has got the most impactful powers today. So why can't Ministry of Housing and Development or wherever we fall in get that kind of a regulation for us? I think that will suddenly make a lot of importance. And also, yesterday I had to send my client to the IGBC guy. He's a consultant and he charged more fee than me, and because he's going to get him extra 0.5 FSI, which I couldn't. So I think something like that is required.
I'm honored to be part of this August gathering. As you have been already briefed about the Manual of Architecture Practice is more elaborate and precise in its scope than the regulations of 89, and briefly defines the role, duties, and responsibilities of an architect while providing architectural services. After giving an introduction and explaining the discipline, it lays down the three principles of professionalism, that is uprightness, proficiency, and kinships, to ensure the highest qualities expected of a registered architect from Council of Architecture. Each of these principles and their aspects have been thoroughly explained in the code. I would like to thank dignitaries on dais, honorable MAP committee members for their valuable contribution in making the manual. This document could have been possible because of that only. I express my heartfelt gratitude to President, Council of Architecture, Vice President, Executive Committee members for their guidance and support throughout. I also extend my warm appreciation to FOAID and all the guests present here on behalf of the Council of Architecture for giving an opportunity to share our thoughts and views on Manual of Architecture. I wish all the success for this mega event, and my humble appeal to all the architects to follow this manual in letter and spirit so that it can achieve its objective and become a standard for times to come. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.